This screencast is going to talk about using InDesign's table of contents feature to create a table of contents in a multi-page document. So before you can use the table of contents feature in InDesign, you have to have two things. One is you need page numbers that are set up through your parent pages and appropriately applied to every page. And you also need, jump back over to, and you also need properly created and applied paragraph styles. In the case of this document, the ones that are most important are our main headlines, because within our table of contents, these are what we're going to initially key on to create the table of contents. So our table of contents will tell us that the introduction is on page 3, history of cities in Ohio, or page 4, Cincinnati is on page 5, etc., as we work our way down through the document. And you'll see that on each of these headlines, we have this main headline applied. So to create our table of contents, once we have all of this, the process is pretty simple. We'll go to Layout, down to Table of Contents, which will bring up this dialog. Clean this up here real quick. And more than likely, this is the way that your dialog will look initially. So the primary areas of this dialog that we need to work with are, this is a section we define the table of contents content, if you will. And if I turn on more options, we can tell it where to place the page number after the entry, before the entry, or no page number, which seems a little backwards. And then we can also tell it what to place between the entry, which in this case would be introduction, and the page number. So the process is pretty simple. We've got two panes up here. This is the pane of styles that are going to be included in our table of contents. These are all of our paragraph styles that are available to us that we've already created and set up. So I'm just going to select main headline, because remember I pointed out that main headline is applied to all of these. Select main headline, and I'm going to click Add, which moves main headline over into this pane. And now we've told it that anything with a main headline applied to it is going to be treated as an entry in our table of contents. We're going to leave our page number after the entry. Actually, let's move this to before the entry, and then we'll edit it later on. We can also set styles for all of these, but we're not going to set any styles for the moment anyway. So we can give our table of contents a style or not. Demo table of contents. And I am going to apply the main headline style to that, just so that it tracks design-wise with the rest of my book. Once I've got my basics set up, I'm just going to say OK. And you'll see that my cursor changes to a cursor that indicates that there's content. So I'm just going to click and drag over the area I want my table of contents to include. So I applied my main headline to the table of contents header, but it also applied it to all of the entries as well. And we'll go back and fix that. We're going to change that here in a moment. So we've got our page number in front and our entry to the left-hand side. So what's important to point out here is that now, as long as I keep it in this form, I can, anytime I change my content, if I need to add a spread and add additional cities, or I just need to move cities around, for instance, let's say that Akron, say we've decided that Akron needs to go first. Cut that out, and I'm going to put Akron here, and everything else is kind of reflowed, so I should probably make some adjustments. And now, if I select my table of contents, I go back to layout and I select update table of contents, you'll see that InDesign automatically updated the pages of Akron and Cincinnati since I swapped them. So it's a pretty simple, once you've got it set up and your pages change, it's a simple process to update your table of contents. So let's go in and make a couple of edits to this table of contents now. Let's do a little bit of styling, and we're going to actually move the page number to the opposite side. So with that selected, I'm going to go back to layout, table of contents, and with my main headline selected in my left-hand pane, you'll see that down here below it, I have the opportunity to specify the paragraph style for that. So I can select one of my paragraph styles that's already, that I already have built, or I could create a new paragraph style. So why don't I just select create a new paragraph style. It's going to bring up the new paragraph style, and I'm going to call this table of contents. This table of contents main entries list. And I'm going to base this on, I don't want to base it on the headline, I want to base it on my body text. Actually, maybe I'll base it on my introduction text. And I'm going to change my character, my point size to 16. We'll leave the typeface alone. And with that, we'll say OK. And now that style sheet has been applied to these main entries. We don't see it happen. There's not a preview button in this window like many of the dialogues in InDesign have, but we've made that change. I'm going to move the page number to after the entry. Remember, this is the entry and this is the page number. And between the entry and the number is a tab. That's what this little caret and a T stand for. You can change that to any number of options here, but we're going to leave it as a tab. That's a fairly simple thing to work with, especially when it comes to our style sheets. So with that, we're going to say OK. And now our new style has been applied, and we've moved our page number. So just going to take a quick look at show hidden characters. And if I zoom in here, we can see that indeed we've got a tab that falls between our entry listing and our page number. So let's do something about that as well. What I want to set up here is to run my page numbers to the right, and I want to put a leader dotted line running between them. So let's just slide that off to the side there. I don't even have to go back into my table of contents now to do this. I can simply go to my paragraph styles, and here's my table of contents main entries list. Make sure you don't have anything selected, otherwise it'll, whenever you select it to open it, it'll change everything. Open that, leave preview selected, and I'm going to go down to tabs and select the right justified tab and place it down here. You see it pulls that out. The tab bar doesn't really show quite accurately. It's showing our right hand indent or margin in kind of close. So we're just going to ignore that. I'm just going to slide this out to about 4 inches. Maybe I'll slide it a little bit further. There we go. And now I want to put this leader in, and it goes in right here. So I'm going to put a dot and a space in there. What it's going to do is repeat that dot and space all the way across to the number. So with that done, I want to say OK. And there we have it. Turn off my hidden characters. So we've created a table of contents with our entries to the left, our page numbers to the right, and we placed a leader running between them. So I can take this one step farther. You see that I've also got inside of my primary entry areas, I've got some sub entries. So for a few of the cities, I've got a couple of their burgs listed. I can include those in my table of contents as well. So if I select my table of contents, go back to layout, go back to table of contents, all I need to do is come down here, and those sub-entries actually had this sub-headline paragraph style applied to them. So I'm going to add those to my list. And you see with sub-headline now, style for sub-headline, I can select another style for that if I want, or I can create a new one, which I think I'm going to create a new one because I want to inset those a little bit. So with sub-headline selected, I'm going to create a new paragraph style. I'm going to base it on my table of contents main entries list. I'm going to change the point size to 14. And I think I want those to indent a little bit. So I'm going to give my left indent, my first line, we'll set the first line indent a little deeper. And we'll leave the page number flush out with the rest of them, at least for now. We'll leave all of this alone. All right, let's take that and we'll see what we get. Say OK. So subheadlines have, oh, and I have to go back in and rename this. I failed to name it. Always name your style sheet so you can easily tell what belongs to what. So I'm just going to select that. I can go ahead and change that later. You can see I could also apply a character style to my entries and to my page number if I wanted to by selecting a page number out here or a character style out here. The process is exactly the same. You're just going to do it with character styles instead. So I'm going to leave it as I've got it. Say OK. And now here's my burgs included inside along with page numbers. So with nothing selected, I'm going to go back into this paragraph style. I'm going to call this table of contents subentries list. And let's see. Actually, the spacing on everything looks pretty good. That's all pretty nice and even because whatever spacing I had placed on my main entries list carried over into my sub entries. I think I will maybe maybe I'll make a character color change for my sub entries. Make it black. I'm gonna leave it black, but I'm gonna make it like 60%. Okay. So there we have it. So we can make additional changes if we need to. Say we want to have a little bit more space between the main entries and maybe a little less space between the sub entries, just to sort of give us some variation. I can take a look at that now simply by going back to my paragraph styles, my sub entries, and I'm just going to take a look at what happens if I drop the space between my subheadings, which actually gets kind of tight down here. It's kind of gappy up here, but maybe I'll go ahead and leave it where it was. Regardless, I can style these any way, shape, or form I want. So that's how to set up a table of contents in InDesign using its table of contents feature. Remember, just to recap, the table of contents feature relies upon having set up page numbers in your parent pages. So you can have as many parent pages as you need. You know, there's no limit. They don't all have to be the exact same parent page. They just have to be applied to the parent pages. And you also have to have the sort of pre-plan a little bit. The entries you want to have show up in your table of contents, those need to be handled with specific paragraph style sheets. And that's it.